Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Carol C.C. Miller, your positive impact coach, peace activator, and global hugger, coming to you with another session of Embrace Your Life Chats, where the focus is to heighten your celebrations and lessen your sorrows through a positive focus. I'm excited today because I have a bunch of other ladies joining me, and I'm going to introduce them in a second. But I always like to let people, I just used a word I'm not fond of, which I'm going to discuss. I like to let people know where I come from. And one of the things is I'm not a big fan of the words always or never. I've done things that I've said I would never do. So I live on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being always unkind, 100 being always kind. And I work on staying in the 80 to 100% of the time. Anger visits me, sadness visits me, frustration visits me, worry visits me, unworthiness visits me. All of those lower vibration feelings visit me, but I have the tools and the daily practice to not let them move in. So I work through them. It's not bad to feel angry. It's not wrong to feel sad. It's how long do you want to stay in that space? So that's what I am here to help with. And today we're going to talk about the word forgiveness. And I do like to use the Merriam-Webster's definition. So Merriam-Webster defines forgive as to cease to feel resentment against. And forgiveness is the act of forgiving. So my panel and I am Carol C.C. Miller from Chicago, are going to discuss what forgiveness means to each of us. Please, hi, Nikki, welcome. And if you have any questions or you're going through something that you're looking for some insight on how to bring a forgiveness practice into your world, please put it in comments. I don't know if all of the panelists will be able to see your comments, but when I see them, I will share them with everybody. So welcome everybody. It's my biggest group that we've had at one time, so this will be fun. And Jaeel, you're to the right of me, so please introduce yourself and what forgiveness means to you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Jaeel, Molokai Mystic. I am a Reiki master, a spiritual mentor, and I am from Hawaii, from the island of Molokai. Forgiveness to me is it's a 3-syllable word that means love. Love of self and love of others. And I could get really in depth into that, but in essence, if we look at what forgiveness really is, we need to, and I use the word need, but we would like to reach the goal of love. Because forgiveness has this stigma around it that's a heavy energy, because it makes us think that someone wronged us or we wronged someone. But in essence, if we look at life as everything has a purpose, then every action and every word also serves that purpose.
Yeah.
So we look at that positivity of it, raise that vibration, and we use the letters in forgiveness as for our releasing grants inner vision of etherealness, because
Oh, I
it
like
gives
that.
higher perspective of why things actually happen. And then we realize there's nothing to forgive. There's only love and acceptance.
Thank you. And as she's mentioned, she's in Hawaii, and I just heard a rooster in the background. I'm just like, oh, no, do not feel worried about it. I love the sounds of the natural areas that you're at. Dani, you are next to Jaeel on my screen, so please share who you are and a little bit about what forgiveness means to you.
I'm Dani Fierro. I'm a transformational coach and energy worker. I'm a Reiki master as well. And I'm in Arizona. I'm in Peoria, Arizona. So here with Lara. So it's hot. It's hot today. But as far as forgiveness for me, I always felt, I shouldn't say always, I felt in the past that forgiveness was saying that whatever somebody did to me was okay. And so, I had a kind of a difficult relationship with forgiveness because I'm like, no, it's not okay.
Yeah.
And it's not right. And I'm not going to forgive them for that. But what I learned is actually forgiveness is for me, and it's a releasing, exactly what you said before, releasing a resentment towards a situation, towards a person. And by doing that, it's not saying that what they did or what happened was okay. It's just releasing that energy connection to
Yeah.
it so that you're able to heal from it. You can see it from a different perspective and take the lessons from it and be able to move forward. So
Wonderful.
that's kind of what forgiveness means to me.
Thank you. And Jeff is watching from Haiti, so thank you for joining us, Jeff. And I'm probably gonna mess up this name, and I apologize. Akintande is watching. I'm not sure where from, but thank you for joining us as well. And Lara, you're up next on my screen. So who are you, Lara?
Who am I?
And what does forgiveness mean to you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lara Pugh. Thanks so much for having me. Of course, Carol. You know how much I love your work. And yeah, so I'm an intuitive and intuition expert and 3-time best-selling Amazon author. And I know I'm not the only one on this call that's a best-selling author. I know, Carol, you're one too, and I bet there's others. But yes, forgiveness for me is about self-forgiveness, actually. That's the thing that I've learned through, challenges in my life is that in order to forgive the other person, it really becomes about me forgiving myself so that I can move forward and have confidence in my next steps, in the choices I made in the past. And like you ladies were saying, knowing that they taught me what I needed to do, knowing that, I came down to this earth to live those lessons, to learn those lessons. And probably one of the best things I ever did was writing my first book. It really helped me understand my own story, and gave me a lot of understanding around some of the choices I made. Because as I wrote my story out, I was like, oh, even there were things that I thought were so random in my life actually made a whole bunch of sense as I looked back on my life. And they were actually enabling me to do the work that I was doing now. Even the hardest things, even the mistakes, quote unquote, that I had made. So yeah, forgiveness for me is about bringing it back to the self and forgiving myself.
I love that. And everyone who is watching, if you have any questions on forgiveness or even sharing what forgiveness means to you, we would love to see it. Shawna, you are up next, woman.
All right. Hi. Excited to be here. Woohoo. So my name is Shawna Marie Fischer. I live in Vancouver, Washington. So there is a Vancouver, Washington, not just a Vancouver, Canada. Little fun fact, right?
Are they
And
close? Are they close to each other?
no,
Okay.
no, actually, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how many hours away it would be. Giuliana might know better with that because I know she's in Canada. Oh, nope, a different part of Canada. So yeah, I'm not sure how many hours away it is, but yeah, a little bit of a drive. So, but now I want to find out, so I'll have to research that. So I am an animal communicator, and gosh, my kind of take on forgiveness. So right, there's always the forgiveness that, when maybe something happens in a relationship or different things in our life, right? It's about, we have to kind of work through releasing that to kind of move forward. But there's also kind of a point that Laura touched on with like self-forgiveness. So I think there's another aspect of forgiveness that is about forgiving others and other circumstances in our life, but it also comes to self-forgiveness. Say that maybe we're down on ourselves because, hey, I should have had this done, or I should have had this done, or I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done this, right? It also, like, a huge part of forgiveness that I think sometimes people don't always tune into them as much is self-forgiveness, and like are things affecting us that maybe we don't forgive ourselves for doing or not doing. So I feel like that's a really important aspect, and writing it out and just talking it out can really help with that. So that's my take.
I love it. Thank you. Miss Ellen, you are next up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Elizabeth Jones. from Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm a soul oracle, mystic messenger, teacher. But let's hop into forgiveness. So, forgiveness for me is freedom. It's freedom from pain. It's freedom from holding on to those um, energetic cords and uh, bounds. The uh, Neil Donald Walsh in his book The Little Soul in the Sun
My
has
my
the most
favorite.
mine too, because it's about understanding. Forgiveness in my understanding doesn't really exist in the next plane. It is something that we've created here in this dimension to help kind of make sense. But that's, going back to, does everything have a purpose? And if so, what could the gift be? And the gift continues to be to remember that we are one. In the little soul in the sun, it says, in that moment that you smite me or betray me, I want you to remember who I am. And, we're not always our behaviors. That's not the truth of who we are. And so the forgiveness for me, because I have a practice each morning where I affirm, I forgive everyone and everyone forgives me, that I forgive myself, because it is typically the resentment that I hold is typically where I have failed to show up for myself in some way, whether it
Yeah,
be boundaries or typically for me it's been boundaries in my experience. And I don't believe that the purpose here that we're going to come out not hurting someone or being hurt, but it's how we evolve, how we experience, how we expand that. And for me, the forgiveness is about freedom and letting go, seeing through the field of grace, because
yeah,
we don't know always what we do. So
yeah.
forgive me.
I love that. Thank you. And last but
Thank you.
by far not least, our Canadian friend Giuliana. I just said where are you from, but share a little bit about you, Giuliana, and what your thoughts are on forgiveness.
Thank you. I'm Giuliana Melo. I live here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I'm a spiritual teacher. And forgiveness has been one of my biggest earth lessons. Forgiving others and also wanting others to forgive me for things that I've done in the past, for not showing up the way others needed me to be because of my own woundedness. And so for me, I think sometimes forgiveness is also allowing myself to clear someone else's energy from my body. You know,
Mm,
I held a lot of pain because people wouldn't forgive me. And I've shared a little bit about, well, it was 5 years and 5 months that my sisters-in-law didn't talk to me. And I had to learn a big lesson in that. Thank Goddess, I have had mentors that have helped me through, and we're finally on the other side. And we've had a reconciliation. And so I would love to share a quote by Oprah because this sums it up for me. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. It's accepting the past for what it was and using this moment and this time to help yourself move forward, to see what your friends that's the quote, not this. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different and accepting the past for what it was and using the moment and the time to help yourself move forward. So I learned that I am valuable. Just like everybody else said, it was the self-forgiveness.
yeah,
Forgiving myself, like Ellen said, that freedom, giving up the resentment, because I also learned that holding on to that resentment was like drinking poison and expecting the
the
other
other
person
person.
to
Yeah,
die.
yeah,
Not that I want anybody to die, but
right.
that analogy fit for me. It was
Yeah,
holding on to all this pain and I needed to let it go. And with forgiveness, in the letting go, it's hard. Those two words seem easy and they're not. And so forgiveness truly is allowing yourself to fill with more light. For anybody that's a student in A Course in Miracles, being in that state of unforgiveness is blocking the light of the world. Whether you believe in that or not, we are light. Part of us is light. Yes, we're in human form, but we're made of light. And so we need to forgive for our own spirit, our own soul, our own growth. And we need to forgive others because I can't remember who said, but in this human condition, it is something that we have, that we have to grow through. And it can be hard and it can be easy. It just depends.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and I think it depends on the circumstance, on if like some things are like, oh yeah, I forgive you easily. And then sometimes, but the concept of forgiveness is pretty easy and you understand why it's important. Sometimes doing it is where the hard part goes in, and holding on to that blame or that shame or whatever, just sometimes that is a harder thing to let go of. I don't recall who said it, but for me, and I think several of you captured it as well, but it really is about the self forgiveness. Even when I'm having to forgive someone else, it's like, why did I give them the power to hurt me in that way? So I have to forgive myself for it. I believe it might have been Eleanor talking about the boundaries kind of thing. So that's a lot of the times where my forgiveness comes into play. And by the way, lady Sunny just said hello to everyone. And one of my favorite mentors is Denise Lynn. And it was several months ago she was talking about it. And here she's been a teacher for 50 years. And again, one of my favorite humans and mentors. And she mentioned the fact that, there are unforgivable things in the world, like child abuse is one that she mentioned. But if you know the story behind the person who created that offense that you've just gone through, you can find some compassion there. And you might actually have done the exact same thing if you grew up in their exact situation too. So it's able to find a little compassion. For me, I also think people feel that forgiveness means accepting and allowing. I can forgive somebody and choose to not be in relationship with them anymore or build a new relationship with them. But it's for me, it's not about making them right or wrong, but it's about, as many of you had said, your own energy and what that means to you. And I have a few comments here that I want to share. I don't know if you ladies can see it, but I'll pop up Sunny's really quick. Rachel's here as well. And again, if anyone has any questions, please share on if you're going through some challenges with forgiveness or what forgiveness means to you. So Anna Power, Anna, good to see you. I didn't see you last week. Says, good morning, ladies. I'm from Central Coast, Cali. I love to be here today. Be careful with what you tell yourself. It makes a huge difference. You need to know that forgiveness is giving yourself a peace of mind that you did say what you needed to. I love that, Anna, because it really is about showing up for yourself as well. And then Jeff says, the best form of love in any relationship, you have that courage to say sorry, you're a bigger person. Agreed. And sometimes that's a hard one to do as well. So my next question for you ladies, and it's going to be whoever wants to answer it first. So of course we're going to talk over each other, but I'll try to call on people. But do you have to forgive to move on? How is that important in your life? Can you have something happen to you that has hurt you in whatever way, whether it be word or action? Must you forgive in order to move on? Who would like to take that first? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, Ellen.
So for me, the whole purpose for me for that freedom, that personal freedom of not having those energetic cords and bounds. So the letting go and the healing happens when I get to that space of letting it go, taking my power back. As you said, that with I have normally judged something, typically myself, in order to hold on to that resentment, like I want to justify. If I'm in a space of wanting to justify, I'm not in a space of that grace and healing and love. And that's where I find my inner peace, is when I'm at that space of letting it go. It doesn't mean that I like it. It just means I'm willing to move forward. I'm willing
Yeah.
to love, because it's that resentment that keeps me bound. It doesn't keep anybody else bound, and somebody else has that power. And one of my mentors has really taught, well, many of us on here, how to take our power back. So for me,
Yeah.
that continues to be the end goal for me is peace. And so yes, getting to that place of healing, and it's a process. It continues to be a process. But until I truly let it go, I'm not going to find true peace within.
Yeah, I love that. Let me quickly read this comment. I don't know if it's completely showing up for you, but Teresa says, I identify so much with how struggling to forgive myself for not being able to move forward and giving up the resentment I was holding on to for the loved ones who just turned their backs with no explanation. Um, Holding on to the shame from the past, even though it's not letting me there. Lost my place. Even though, where did I go? Oh, there I am. I've confronted everyone and apologized for any wrongdoing and also feel like I have been nothing but kind. So this creates resentment in the back of my mind. Teresa, resentment is an easy thing to experience and it's can be challenging to work through. So I'm going to ask you guys your thoughts on that. But I don't remember who brought it up. It might have been Giuliana, where forgiving, having others forgive you for something you did. And sometimes what you did may not even be necessary in your mind to forgive, but they took it in a way that hurt them, even though you truly, I mean, sometimes we say things intentionally to hurt somebody because we're that mad, but often it's the other person is taking it in a way that really isn't, like you didn't even mean it the way that they took it. So there's lots of different ways to need to forgive. But what do you guys think about Teresa and resentment, or just do you have to forgive? Dani?
Yeah, I wanted to speak on the resentment part because that is something that comes up for me, and I find that when I get in that place of resentment, it's because I'm not true to myself.
Mm.
I'm doing or agreeing to things that is not something that I really wanted to do in the first place. Or wasn't, within me, or it didn't align. I didn't align with it, and so that's when I start getting resentful towards, whatever the situation or the person, because I'm doing this stuff that where I wasn't setting boundaries and I wasn't being true to my boundaries, and this person is not, playing with my rules, but I haven't verbalized the rules.
Right.
So that's where resentment would come in for me. And again, there's that self-forgiveness. It's like, okay, Danielle, I forgive you for not setting the boundaries and, verbalizing your boundaries. So let's make that happen, because you can't move forward if you don't set yourself up to begin with. So.
Excellent. I have another question from somebody, but if anybody else wants to talk about you have to forgive or resentment? Okay, so we're going to go with Lara, then Shawna, then Jaeel.
Thanks.
And I'm going to add in this, Lara, in case you want to add it in. Teresa is talking about people not willing to forgive
Right.
and how to move through that too. So you don't have to cover that right now, but that is the next thing that I would like people to discuss, how they move through if somebody won't forgive them, or if you've chosen
Okay.
not to forgive somebody.
Yeah, I will. So I thank you for letting me share this. So something I've seen in readings, actually, in doing medium readings and group readings, is sometimes we don't ascend all the way up into heaven, and we've found that in readings. And so what I have noticed in those readings is that the reason why a soul is struggling with going up is because of self-forgiveness. They're like almost literally energetically weighed down by their own self. It's not because God didn't forgive them or somebody didn't. It's themselves. And I just feel like on earth, that is also this case. It's like you weigh yourself down. So is it important? Yeah, it's important for right now so that we can feel free, as we've talked about, but also like when you die, like I don't want to get stuck. I want to go up, you know? So yeah, I mean, for the bigger picture, you were talking about like kind of moving through, you know, I know probably all of us on this call have had to move through some difficult stuff, myself included. A couple of the things that have worked for me, two things. One is just asking for that, you know, however, whatever the verbiage is for you. Some of us say God, some of us say spirit, divine, whatever, okay? But calling and asking for that divine intervention, because it will come. It will come. The second thing is I have a little mantra that I say, and I say, I can forgive the unforgivable. I can forgive the unforgivable. And even as I say it, I'm like, oh, I feel better, you know? And what's funny is when I say that, then when people do like little things that are very forgivable, I go, oh, I can forgive the forgivable. Like that just makes it all easier. I'm like, oh yeah, if I can forgive the unforgivable, I can definitely forgive the forgivable. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
I love that. And before I go to you, Shawna, I just wanted to also mention Teresa added some more about these family members have stopped talking to her. Teresa, it's been about 3 years ago, and it wasn't a family member, but it was a very close girlfriend of mine that we would talk probably 3 times a week or a couple times a week. We did a lot of things, and all of a sudden, radio silence, did not talk to me and our two other friends. So it was kind of a foursome that we did a lot of things together. I reached out to her for 6 months on texting, like, what did I do? I apologize, calling, leaving voice messages, and nothing. And I still have not heard from her. So it took me the ability that I had to forgive, wanting to hold on to that relationship. For whatever reason, the relationship came to an end for her. So it was about forgiving, like, I can't make her talk to me. So you can't make your family talk to you. So it goes back into, for me, that self forgiveness of, I don't know what I did, and maybe I didn't do anything. But sometimes we have to forgive when we don't have closure, and that adds an extra level to it, but it's still possible. So, Shawna?
Yeah, so wow, I just all this is so profound. So I feel like like a couple things I want to mention. So sometimes I had a thing recently. It's been a few months now. A very dear friend, there was some shifts and changes, and like I spoke up with my boundaries, and then I got blasted back by them from doing that. And and I reached out one more time. I didn't hear back. And I just had to kind of like realize at that moment, like I have to let this go at this moment. And, now I'm kind of thinking about reaching out again to this person because I've known them for years. But it also made me think of like, I don't know, like there's something that's shifted and going on with her. So maybe like that friendship has to take a space for whatever she's going through. And it's not like, it's not necessarily anything personal. It's just we're all in our different spaces, and it's helped me to kind of realize different things that are important to me, like in that kind of break of that friendship. So it's interesting how those things can come to play. And I feel like writing it out can definitely be very helpful. Like writing things out. When I got divorced years ago, when I was in my 20s, I actually wrote my ex-husband a thank you card. Like I gave him a thank you card for the experiences that I was able to go through and where I was able to become, who I was able to become. So sometimes just like writing it out, and you can keep it or not keep it. Sometimes that can be, really helpful. But then answer, is it like important to forgive? I feel like it is, because otherwise it like kind of ties you down and you can't be free from that. So you have to kind of like let things go as hard as it is, right? I feel like it's important to forgive, otherwise it can kind of hold you back in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I just put up Bree's comment on, she just sent something to her ex. So I thought when you mentioned that, it was a perfect timing for that. And it really, for me, it is about getting that resentment out of our bodies. And I don't remember who mentioned it, but I think it was Ellen. But like that person who has hurt you, however it's hurt you, they're not losing sleep over it, probably. Like they've let it go, and they may not even know that it hurt you so bad. So you holding on to it and growing it and just seething with it is the hurting you. It's not affecting them and having an impact on them. So it's really important to take care of your own mental and spiritual well-being. Jaeel, you were next.
Thank you. I love the fact that, one, we all came on here with a primary focus on forgiveness, and yet we each have our own perspective in sharing, and it just goes to validate the individual, yet the unity of all of us. And I'm listening to the importance of the self-forgiveness from everyone, and I'm loving the energy of all of that. I did want to touch on, because when I heard I can forgive the unforgivable, I love that, because I can forgive the unforgivable. A certain someone in my life who I have forgiven, so I won't mention a name, killed me. So I have had a near-death experience, and I can forgive them for that. The abuse from my father's alcoholism, and he was a drug addict, and he was also this fantastic musician, but he also had a band at the house, who, under the influence, there were certain activities that people would consider unforgivable for children. And I can forgive that. I can forgive the unforgivable. And people, if they could understand, like I said before, forgiveness is a three-syllable word meaning love. Love of self and love of others. And when we look at forgiveness of others, everyone is really working on forgiving themselves, but when we forgive ourselves, it brings us that breath, and when we can forgive others, we can breathe it back in.
Yeah.
We have that to and fro of the air. And it was really hard with my father, with the other person that killed me. It was really easy. I was more mad at myself because I was a heaven reject. Like, hey, I got kicked out of heaven. What's wrong with me? Then I had to work on myself. But with my father, I really had to dissect him. I had to understand what in his life created the actions that he took. In order for me to have this understanding, I needed it more in my heart than in my head. And so I had to look back and see what created, because no one is born bad. Hurt people hurt people. So what hurt him?
Yeah.
And then
But
I did forgive him, and I told him I forgave him. But I also had to love myself enough to set boundaries.
right.
And say, your issues are not my issues. And if you want to have a relationship with me, these are my rules. A, B, and C. Don't come at me under the influence, da, 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 da. And he could not abide by those. So we don't have a relationship.
Yeah.
But I can release him in his activities and what he needs to go through for his journey with love and respect, knowing that that's his journey. So forgiveness of others is just as important as forgiving of self.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of my mantras is I love unconditionally, but my participation has conditions. So I can love people for who they are and how they show up in the world, but if it's not good for me or they're not matching my boundaries or whatever, then it's either a limited participation, and there's some people that I have had to cut out of my life because of it. But it doesn't mean that I can't love them still. And sometimes there's people in your life that it's easier to love from afar too. So but I also wanted to say a couple of things, like Jaeel, when you mentioned the hurt people hurt others, and I absolutely agree with that. And there are a lot of hurt people out there that don't hurt others. So it's not like everybody who's hurt. I mean, I think all of us probably, the majority of us, I don't like absolutes, have something from childhood or a recent thing that has hurt us, and we have not hurt others. Maybe we hurt ourselves, or we just take it inward and don't really deal with it. But I don't think everyone who is hurt is out there hurting others. So I wanted to specify on that. And I also wanted to say for everyone listening, all of these ladies here who are phenomenal people have done a lot of self-reflection, self-work, teaching, and all that stuff. So if you have not done that for yourself and you're having a hard time forgiving, I mean, I think every one of us has said even forgiving can still be challenging for us, even with the work we've gone through and done. So please do not beat yourself up if you have an experience in your life that you're unwilling to forgive. Maybe today is not the day to do it. Maybe it's 3 months from now, maybe it's 3 years from now, but I do encourage you to know that it's good for you to get it out of your body. So that's where the resentment is living within you, not the other person. So, anyone else want to talk about that? Or otherwise, I'm going to ask people to give some tips and how have you used forgiveness or steps that you've done to allow yourself to forgive or to be forgiven? Who would like to go? And before, okay, Shawna, I'll have you go next, but I just want you guys to know I've got this teeny tiny picture of all of you. So if I'm missing hands, please unmute yourself and speak up. I don't want to miss anybody who wants to participate, but it's like I have the live button over half of your faces. So it's like, come on, show it better. But go ahead, Shawna.
Okay, well, that's such a great question. And I'm really loving this conversation. Like, it's so powerful, right? Because I feel like it's such an important topic that's not always talked about, right? Like forgiveness, because it's such a huge topic. So I feel like the tools that I use for it are like self-reflection. And I give myself some time in that self-reflection, right? So it may not be like overnight. It may be like a course of like, a few days, a week, months, right? It's like time to kind of absorb it. Yeah. And sometimes maybe some time in like meditation or self-hypnosis, right? That can be powerful. Maybe, going for a walk, kind of doing something that's distracting, right? Like kind of why we're thinking about it. Maybe if we're creative, we draw or we do something like that, or we knit, something to kind of keep our mind on it where it's not focused on it, where maybe it'll allow things to come through in a different way. And I feel like another powerful tool is writing. I think writing is so helpful. And even just sometimes you don't have to, you can talk it out loud to others just to have people be that observer, not the absorber, to really listen. But you can even talk it out loud to yourself too. That can really help too, right? Like I feel like all those things, there's so many, great tools. And I feel like it's really individual and what works for you. I don't think there's like a right or wrong or an absolute. Right. It's like how it helps your internal dialogue kind of process through that forgiveness. And it can be more than one way. So there you go. That's my thought.
I love it. More than one time. Juliana, did you just raise your hand?
Yeah, I love what Shawna said. And what was coming to me was, as I reflect on my own journey, it's like a team of support to help you, because there's you need to forgive yourself. Absolutely. The best apology is the one you give yourself. However, when you need to forgive others, you may need a team of support, doctors and psychiatrists, psychologists, mentors, priests, whatever religion you might belong in. Because for me, there's different depths of forgiveness. There's somebody that might, forget to meet you. I mean, that's something that you could just forgive in a flash and forget it. And then there might be something, like skeletons in our closets, abuses, things like that a lot of us don't share until you might get an illness like I did. I walked through cancer, which is deep resentment held in the body. And then I've been on this journey the last 10 years to release it so that I'm not carrying it. And there's days where you're excellent at it, and then there's days that you're not. And, I honestly don't think that there's one answer. That's why I love, I believe in the letter writing, not letters that you send, but letters that you might write and burn, and absolutely talking to a friend, talking to a mentor. For me, it's been like a journey. It continues to be a journey of letting go, of that letting go. They work very symbiotically together, forgiveness and letting go. And things come up, we're humans, so we're going to do things, and things are going to be done to us.
Yeah.
And it's even, one of our mentors works with murdered parents of murdered children. And I'll never forget, like, some of the stories where the parents are like, I can forgive the perpetrator. And then there's others, even in my own family, where they're like, they don't forgive. I
Right.
come from Italian background. There were resentments that they held on to till the day, like, some of my grandparents or my aunties and uncles died, because it's like, no, that's unforgivable. And so I think forgiveness is something that is truly a gift for those that can do it, and those of us that can forgive ourselves as well. It's a gift we give ourselves. So, I think we're worth it. It's worth digging deep to that deep pain and allowing yourself that freedom, that extra light, if you will.
Yeah.
Not extra, more light, more light.
And it's interesting how you said that, because there are some people who find the forgiveness easier, and then others who, like, they want them on the death row and like an eye for an eye kind of thing. And I'm not intrigued enough to research it, but it's like I always wonder, how do people come up to that where they can come to forgiveness and the others that don't. I watched a documentary, and I'll have to see if I could find it. It's been several years ago, but it was called The Power of Forgiveness, and they interviewed all sorts of different people. And one was an Amish family who had strangers come in and kill their daughter or something, and they had forgiveness. And I don't recall right now. There was one story out of all of them, and they were all tragic situations that they were talking about. That one of them chose that they had not reached the ability to forgive, but it was fascinating, all the different stories and how they came to forgiveness. Where one gentleman, his son was killed by another teenager, and eventually, I think it was drinking and a gunfight or something. I don't recall the incidents, but it became that father hooked up with that teenager, and they went around to different high schools talking about gun violence, and so how he forgave him, and then um, came with a bond on a purpose to make something good out of a tragic situation. So I think that's really powerful.
I love that. That's beautiful right there.
Yeah. Anyone else, ladies, on some tips for how you move through forgiveness?
I just like to add that a lot of us here today, we've supported each other. And when it comes to forgiving self, like forgiving others, I can forgive the unforgivable. But then when I looked at myself, I was the heaven reject. And I'm very hard on myself. Um, and so that aspect of it, I needed that group environment. Reach out is what I would say. Take that first step and share something that is holding you back in forgiving yourself. Even if it's just something that is really small, you're going to find that others are experiencing it too. You're not alone. And it's okay to have that support from others. And sometimes it's even necessary, because other people have a different view of you than you do yourself. And usually it's a lot better. It's a lot stronger. They see that light in you. Whereas we're on the other side of that light beam, So we haven't quite seen that shine on ourselves yet. And so it really is helpful to just know that it's okay to be vulnerable, because that's where our strengths are too.
Yeah.
So reach out, get a community, get some support,
Absolutely.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, and we tend to be our worst enemies for sure. So when we think of outer people hurting us, I suspect each one of us have hurt ourselves, whether in thought, word, or even action, more than other people have hurt us. So it's important to, be compassionate to yourself as much as to share compassion with others. Ellen, I actually
Yes.
saw your hand, so I'm yay.
Yay. But that's a beautiful point, because we attract what we are. So when we are in a place of judgment, we receive that energy back. I mean, our energy, what we put out there, it comes back to us like a boomerang. And part of that self-love and self-compassion and the grace is by owning, gosh, what is my part in this? What am I willing to free myself from? It doesn't mean that I like it or always
Want to
want
look
to
at it?
accept it. Right. But if I am triggered, there's a gift, there's something within me that is crying out for healing.
Yeah.
And so um, that's to thine own self be true is standing in the power that we are one and that like Neil Donald Walsh, I love, for me it's The Little Soul in the Sun. I absolutely go to that book if I'm struggling with wanting to justify, like I have
Yeah.
a right to be
I'm
angry,
right, you're wrong. Yeah.
right, if I'm wanting to justify, I'm not in a space of healing. And the one line in the book that says, um, well, it's from God, but you could say spirits, universe, source, that I've sent nothing but angels. And so, what is the unforgivable? I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of hard things in this earth. The victimization, and we don't know, and that's Denise then also has been one of my teachers where that compassion comes in, and
Yeah.
that me standing in judgment of another only creates that to come back to me tenfold, that judgment, instead of being in that peace and that we are one and that we're each unique expressions of
Yeah.
God's source and all that we say, do, think, believe. And so honoring one another and seeing the gifts and being willing to do the inner work. And like you said, sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I don't want to. And, that's my 2-year-old self having a tantrum.
Yeah. Exactly.
However, if the desired outcome for me is that peace, that inner
Yeah.
peace, and the intimacy and vulnerability in relationships. And I too have had family members that just on a dime that it stopped. The relationship ended, but I was in a course, I was in a mentorship with someone whom the timing was perfect because she said, all you can do, yep, you're powerless over what they choose. It's how you show up, how you respond. And today I choose to work on responding, which means there's a place for healing versus reaction,
Reacting.
which I can
Yeah.
still do too. So being accountable for, owning my energy, maintaining my own energy continues to be my work on a daily basis. And that's why I do start every day with, I forgive everyone and everyone forgives me. It's kind of a uh, Martha Beck in one of her workshops, she was she would always say, "I love everyone and everyone loves me." Well, you start saying that and you feel it, and so for me, it's a practice of I forgive everyone and everyone forgives me. Now,
And I just
that
wish everybody could hear how Martha Beck says it too, because
I
she
know
says
I
it
love
like,
everyone. She's so sassy. She and Miss Gilbert, so
yes,
sassy,
they're very
but
sassy and very awesome.
and that just raises the vibration instead of that victimhood. And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, people have been victimized.
Right.
I'm not acknowledging that. It's just where does that freedom lie for each of us, and only each of us can decide that for ourselves. But thankfully, we don't have to walk this walk alone ever,
Yeah.
unless we choose to.
Very good. Anyone else have some comments on Dani and then Lara?
I just wanted to say, as far as a tip, is that I think sometimes when I've struggled anyway with forgiveness, I just thought, oh, I could just say, I forgive myself. I forgive. So, I forgive this situation and it should be done, all set and all done. But I realized that really what forgiveness what needs to happen in order to go to forgiveness is a changing of your mindset, a changing of a belief, a thought, a feeling. That's part of the forgiveness, not just saying it. You can't just say it and then it's done. You actually have to feel differently towards yourself, towards the other person, towards the situation. That's the forgiveness portion of it.
Yeah.
The feeling differently, not just saying the words. You can say the words till you're blue in the face, but if you still feel the same way towards it, it's not doing anything for you. You're not truly forgiving. So that's my tip, is to keep in mind that the thoughts, the belief, the feeling has to change, not just saying the word, in order to release that resentment and in order to fully forgive, in general. So that's my tip.
I love that. And I think it's a process too, because I can release it and then all of a sudden 2 months later something comes up and I'm back in resent and I'm like, nope, nope, nope. And so it's, it is a process depending on the circumstance of what took place.
And on
But
top of that, just giving yourself grace, because, and I say this, as you up level in life, those old lessons come back looking differently.
yeah,
And so, like you said, those resentments, it's going to look a little bit different, but how you felt or that similar situation from before is going to come back looking a little bit different. And all of those feelings are going to come back. And so it's a matter of catching yourself, giving yourself grace. That's part of the forgiveness journey, giving yourself grace and saying, okay, this is coming up again. I'm feeling this again. Let's do that work again. And it's just utilizing those tools again. So there.
I love that. Thank you. And then Lara, I'm going to let you close it out because I have a 12:30 commitment. Otherwise, I would talk with these ladies all day long.
Yeah, and we're talking about the process. I just wanted to add that part of that process is often, crying or being angry. Somebody was, Carol, as you know, I was just blindsided by an engagement breakup, and somebody was asking me about it yesterday, and I was like, oh, I'm in the anger stage. I'm definitely in the anger stage. And, because there's the expression, the only way to is through.
Right.
So just being okay with, feeling the feels when you need to feel them.
I think that
part
is
of the process.
a great reminder because, when you think about forgiveness and you're on the other side and you've forgiven, you don't realize the journey through that has been frustration, tears, lack of self-worth on your own part, anger, all of those things, generally speaking, we go through to get to that point of forgiveness. It might be a 5-minute process on a really easy thing to forgive, or it might be days, weeks, months, or years on something bigger that we're working through and can still come back up again and things like that. So, ladies, thank you, thank you, thank you. For everyone to know, we're doing monthly group chats. So the next one is the first Tuesday of September. Can you believe it's September? It'll be September already. It's the power of words. So I'm asking people who are joining me then to bring 3 to 5 of their favorite quotes that they use in their own lives and what the impact of those words are on them. And then, of course, anyone who is listening with us, I would love for you to share your quotes as well. And I will be back Tuesday or Thursday. It'll just be me. And then next week on Tuesday, I have Paul Zavagno joining me, and he talks about the work of Byron Katie. He is a certified in that work, and it's really powerful. So we'll talk about how to um, work through a process to release stressful thoughts. And then Thursday, Miss Shawna Fischer is back joining us doing some free animal communication. So please join me on Thursday. I don't know what the topic will be yet. If you have ideas in comments, share them. And it did sound like with our group chat, I will like to add another group chat talking about boundaries. I think that would be a great one to talk to. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was helpful. It's here to help heighten your celebrations and lessen your sorrows. And remember, you matter. You matter to me. You matter to the world. And most importantly, you matter to you. So we'll talk again soon. See you on Thursday. So long for now.